Permission. Okay.
ரொம்ப க்ளோஸ்.
Congratulations, madam. Dean sir, over 1 minute join பண்றாரு. Dean sir is joining in another 1 minute. Madam, join பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காரு.
Okay, sir.
Okay. இல்ல 4 வைக்கிறாங்க. நாங்க விஸ்வநாத் ரூம்ல. ஆமா.
Dr. Karthika, good evening. Good afternoon.
Good evening, sir.
I'm sorry, I was in a meeting.
Absolutely no problem, sir. We can start now.
Murali, shall I start?
Yes, sir. We can start it, sir.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone who have logged into this webinar. And this is one of the series of webinars Sri Ramakrishna Hospital is arranging every fortnightly, and for the benefit of all the consultants, general practitioners from outside the hospital, and also assistant medical officers of this hospital. And today's topic is on the stereotactic treatment techniques of radiotherapy, to be given by our well-known radiation oncologist, Dr. Karthika Nageshwar Raj. And she is almost like born and brought up in this hospital from her education, and she has established herself as one of the best radiation oncologists in the city. And she is so voracious in her speech also. Generally, the expression is so good, and you can experience her talk today. And on behalf of Sri Ramakrishna Hospital, I welcome all the senior consultants from Sri Ramakrishna Hospital and from Coimbatore City, and also the general practitioners and practicing doctors from all over Coimbatore to this webinar, and have a pleasant experience. Over to Dr. Karthika Nageshwar Raj. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this kind introduction. And I'm very happy that you could spare some time to join us now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karthika.
I welcome all of you who have spared your valuable time for attending this webinar till now, and I think more for others to also to join. I welcome all of you for this meet. I thank the management for organizing this because it gives a knowledge about a different field to other department consultants as well. So today the talk I've split into two, one half because it's going to be a mixed crowd. So one half I've put only regarding the basics and what we do as radiation oncology in the department, what is the nature of our job, and the second half about stereotactic radiotherapy, which is the latest in our department. So I think this is how we perceive radiotherapy, not only the patients, irrespective of the patient. I feel some other specialty medical doctors, including medical doctors, the idea of radiotherapy is definitely less because it is not a UG subject and we all do it as a specialty program. So most probably, most of the time, the knowledge about radiotherapy is less when compared to other fields, even among doctors. And when it comes to patients, I've seen when they walk into medical oncologist OPD, they don't cry. When they enter a surgeon's OPD, they don't cry. They know a surgeon is going to cut and stitch them, but still, I've never seen them cry. But when they enter into my department, when they enter into my OPD, definitely they will, some people cry, some people scream. I've seen in my experience, 2 patients ending up in CCU in 1 hour before I could put a pen on them, just a pen. Because they imagine radiotherapy to be, a killing tool. Maybe it's popularized as current treatment. And I don't know, because of the charring effect of all kind of radiotherapy machines and equipments. But now it is totally different. The perception has to change. So that's the idea of taking this webinar in a very paced manner. So let me tell you some important great figures in radiotherapy or as such radiology department. We have to know these people because without them, there is no radiology, there is no radiotherapy. So Roentgen is a Swedish physicist and he worked day and night in Würzburg University, Germany. This is a conversation which I read at least monthly once, that's really wonderful. Between him and Mr. Dam. He was a scientific journalist. He worked for Meteor magazine, and he was the one who was interviewed a lot of scientists those days. So when nobody could get an interview from Roentgen, he was the only journalist who could do so. He convinced him so well that, of course, Roentgen accepted for giving him. Am I audible? Am I audible? Yeah. No, we gave it. Okay. Yeah. So this is the conversation between Mr. Dam and Roentgen. So after he discovered X-rays, so he asked, "Is it light?" He said, "No." And is it electricity? Not in any known form. What is it then? He said, "I don't know." Roentgen said, "I don't know." The conversation between Roentgen and Dam, and that was the discovery of X-rays. So because he didn't know what it was and he couldn't name what it is, he gave the name X because we always name unknown things as X. What you couldn't visualize? Can you see now? Yeah. Sorry for that interruption. So that was the discovery of X-rays, which was in November 1895. And then it was Henry Becquerel. In 1896, he discovered some form of radioactive rays. He called those as Becquerel rays. Becquerel noted the first biologic effect of radiation. That means what radiation can do to human beings and the living tissue. So because he used to carry a small amount of radioactive material in his shirt pocket, and there was multiple skin erythemas on him. And Marie, without her, there is no radiotherapy department. So Marie Curie and Pierre Curie, they observed that it was obvious that a new science was in the course of development, and she coined the word radiotherapy, radioactivity. She published both of them published their findings in 1898. The Curies and Becquerel were awarded Nobel Prize for the same in physics in 1903. Why I had to mention all these three is because you know how they died. Roentgen died of bowel cancer. Becquerel died of unknown cause, but he had a lot of skin erythemas almost spread all over through his skin. And Marie died because of aplastic anemia in a very young age. So that means they've dedicated all their life in the discovery of radioactive material and without exploring too much about it and the destructive part of it. So that's where the science started and radiotherapy began from then. What is radiotherapy? It's a clinical modality dealing with use of ionizing radiations in the treatment of patients with malignant neoplasias. And occasionally, of course, we do treat benign diseases. As a discipline, it exists at the juncture of physics and biology because we do have to know radiophysics, and then we have a separate subject called radiobiology. That means what radiation does to the human tissues. And radiation that addresses the therapeutic uses of ionizing radiation alone or in combination with other treatment modalities, like you combine radiotherapy with biologic therapies, we call it as targeted therapy, or we give it plus or before or after surgery. We combine with chemotherapy, which is mentioned as drugs, or with oxygen, or with heat, which call it as hypothermia. And it is concerned with the investigation of fundamental principles of cancer biology, the biologic interaction of radiation with normal and malignant tissue, and the physical basis of therapeutic radiation. How do we plan and go about a course of radiotherapy? The most important in planning radiotherapy is we should have an indication. That means, as I told you, radiation is a double-edged sword. We are handling some material with radioactivity. That means it continuously emits energy. So it is a double-edged sword. It is used for constructive purpose as well as for destructive purpose. So whenever we have any case, we should have analyzed the case thoroughly, and there should be 200% indication to direct X-rays or cobalt rays on them. So indication is a must. And whenever we see a patient, what is the goal in irradiating the patient? Are we going to cure his disease, or are we going to palliate any symptom? What is the treatment volume? Where are we going to treat this patient? What is the apt technique? There are so many techniques from 2D to today, let's say stereotactic. So many options are available, which is right for that patient. And what is the dose I'm going to deliver on him, and how I'm going to fractionate it? And most important, even above all this, is the radiation tolerance of the surrounding normal tissues. That's what we call it as organs at risk. So whenever we plan radiotherapy, it has to be justified. What we call as justification is, it is justified either because it improves local tumor control, it ameliorates a specific symptom, improves the quality of life, or increases the probability of cure. At least one of this has to be satisfied before we decide to expose radiation on any patient. This is called justification. And the basic principle which all radiation oncologists follow is ALARA, which means as low as reasonably achievable. Means however small the doses, if no direct benefit out of it, kindly avoid it. And always we decide in the best interest of the patient. The biological effects, what actually radiation does to human tissue. They are largely the result of DNA damage, because we have radiation which are non-ionizing and ionizing. Say we have so many tube lights, these are all non-ionizing radiation, it's not going to be hazardous to me. But if I have an ionizing radiation, say a cobalt unit or a cobalt source just next to me, I cannot be sitting like this happily in a room where there will be continuous emanation of or continuous exposure to radiation. So any ionizing radiation will damage the DNA. Within the ionization is it is interacting with the DNA molecule either directly or indirectly. Directly means it is particulate radiation, like the proton beam therapy, which is coming up in a big way. So those are particle radiation which directly kills the DNA. What we use is X and gamma rays. They are all indirectly ionizing radiation. So they act on water, like because the human body, it is composed 80% of water molecules. Because it can interact with water molecule, produce free radicals, and the radicals damage the DNA. So this is what is the basic principle of the X-rays what we use. Cell killing is by ionizing radiation. what it is exponential function of dose. That means if we increase the dose, the cell killing can also increase. It follows that the dose required for a certain level of tumor control probability is directly proportional to the logarithm of the number of clonogenic cells in the tumor deposit. Clonogenic cells means the cells which has ample capacity to multiply. That means a tumor. So what is the difference between a normal cell and a tumor cell? Tumor cell has a continuous dividing capacity, uncontrolled. So it keeps on dividing. So those kind of cells, which we call in radiotherapy, initial presentation, if the number of log cells, that means initial number of cells is less, then your dose is proportional to that. That means even with lower dose, you can control those kind of growth. But when the patient comes to us with T5, T10, that means large tumor sizes, then definitely single modality is not enough. Even with radiotherapy, even with full course, there will be residual disease because your initial number of clonogenic cells are more. So this is the picture which says how radiation interacts with the DNA and how it causes the DNA damage. And we have to understand the same thing happens even if it is a normal cell. But the basic difference between a normal cell and a tumor cell, in a tumor cell, the cancer biology is it is a deranged cell. Lot of mechanisms are deranged. Normal cell, it has good capacity to repair itself. So that is where the difference lies, and we radiation oncologists play in that difference. So what we define as cell death in radiology, or radiobiology, is it is the loss of reproductive integrity. That means the cell, the tumor cell, what we call tumor cell is uncontrolled cell multiplication. So if we are able to arrest the reproductive integrity of that cell, that means we have caused death in that cell. So in radiation, what we induce is we stop the multiplication of cells, which indirectly means cell death. Cell dies while attempting to divide. That means we cause mitotic death because of use of X-rays. Response to tumor cell and normal cell is different. That's what I said. Normal cell will have normal repair capacity. So even with so much of injury caused by the radiation, which is used for treating the tumor cell, the normal cell still survives. It repairs itself, it comes back again. But the tumor cell will not. So what is the evolution which happened in the radiotherapy field? Initially, it was single fraction. Like they were trying only large doses, 8 gray or 10 gray or 20 gray. They were trying to give it as one fraction. That means a single dose. But they couldn't achieve cure. So slowly, the radiobiological experiments, they tried to divide the dose slowly and divide it into every day. Say they started with 500, 600 per day, and then now we give 200 centigrade per day. Centigrade. Totally over, depending on the site, we give either as 5 weeks or as 6 weeks or as 7 weeks as per the tumor demands. It is all internationally followed protocols. So how do we plan a sequence? That is how we plan on a patient. As the patient enters our OPD day 1, we decide, we have checked everything what I told, like we have justified, we have an indication. So how do we plan him now? So first we have to decide how are we going to position the patient. It is depending on the tumor site. And very important is immobilization. That means what we are going to deliver or how radiotherapy is delivered is just like doing an imaging scan, like how you do a CT scan or an MRI scan. Even for CT scan and MRI scan, you have to lie down still. But it is a one-day program. Just 3 minutes, or sometimes in our hospital, the machine scans in 3 seconds. So just for 3 seconds or 4 seconds to lie still is very simple. But for radiotherapy, you need a reproducibility program. That means your program continues for, it's a daily event, 5 days a week, and then we give it for 6 weeks or 7 weeks. That means it has to be perfectly reproduced every day. For that, you need perfect immobilization. That means it has to immobilize. At the same time, the patient has to be comfortable. With the immobilization equipments and with the proper positioning, the patient will be taken up for a planning CT or an MRI as per the site demands. And we take very close slices, 1 to 3 mm slicing will be done for the treatment area, and the images will be sent to our computer. We get around 150 to 200 slices of the treatment site. Say for head and neck, we take from forehead to D4. That means it is around, say, 200 slices when I do it in 2 mm or 3 mm. And after that, we sit and contour. Contouring means we draw or we volume every structure in every CT slice. This is the major job of a radiation oncologist. And we have to understand that radiotherapy is always an example for teamwork, because radiation therapy cannot be delivered only with doctors. We need people which are trained in individual field. Now we need a physics team. They are radiophysics people who do the planning for us. And we need the technologists who are going to execute the treatment in the treatment machine. So we stand always an example for teamwork. That's how the triangle picture, and inside we see this is the logo of radiation department. So the treatment planning is done by the physics team, and it is what we do. Verification is always done by a whole team, like the physics people, as well as the technologist, as well as the oncologist. And there will be QA program, like what we call it as quality assurance program for the patient, especially when we plan high precision radiotherapy and everything is fine, then we deliver the treatment with 100% precision and accuracy. So these are all the immobilization devices which are available here and everywhere where they have the radiotherapy department. So this is the most comfortable setup what we do. So according to the site of treatment, we immobilize. So you can see this is the head and neck cast. This is a thermoplastic material which is stiff when seen, separately. But we put it in hot water, it becomes very soft. Or we can use like a microwave stuff. We can just make it soft and then stretch it on the patient, and it takes the patient's shape. And after it cools down, it becomes rigid. So it is reproducible. Whenever the patient comes for the treatment next day, we put on the patient and then we fix it and then we execute the treatment. So all the planning marks will also be on the cast so that it will not disappear. So there is no marking on the patient. Patient can take bath, they can be comfortable. It is not like olden days. This is what I told as contouring. That means we volume in every slice. See, this is abdomen CT. This is a pelvic CT where we have contoured separately bladder, your femoral heads, everything. The volume of the target area as well as all the organs at risk, which is all the normal structures. Say, for example, if we are going to treat the head and neck area, now we have to contour everything, like we have to contour the constrictors, the parotid, which is very important, spinal cord, which has the least tolerance. So every structure we have to contour so that we after the plan is generated, we analyze the plan. In the sense, we have to see whether the target has got full dose as well as the normal structures have got the tolerant doses. Okay, next we decide the radiotherapy techniques. Now, this is the main topic of today. So how we have moved on from conventional radiotherapy to the stereotactic therapy, which we do today. Now, I think this picture is very clear how we have evolved. This is conventional radiotherapy. Now, you see the target is drawn as a human figure. But in those days when we were students, what we do is even the target is of smaller shape, we can deliver only a square or rectangular field. That means you have lot of normal structures outside the target area, like here, all these are normal structures which will get the same dose as much as you are irradiating for the target. And then slowly we moved on to 2D conformal. That means we can shape the field in only one direction. And then we had 3D conformal, in which we can shape in all 4 directions. And then we went on to move on to IMRT, in which we can even modulate the dose of the normal structures which are also inside the field. That means the beam is passing, you get some dose, but we can still reduce the dose which is inside the portal. So this is how we volume. We can see it is, this is what is the gross tumor volume, which we see in the imaging or CT or MRI of the patient. And the next one we call clinical target volume, in which we have microscopic disease. That means we have to give margin. See, it's very similar of how a surgeon operates. Now, a surgeon is operating a cancer tumor. That means he gives a margin. We call it as wide excision. That means he gives at least all around 1 centimeter or 1.5 centimeter to give clearance. The same amount of tissue, the same principle is applied in radiotherapy. And then, so we also give that margin. And extra in radiotherapy is we do have extra, we give another blue one, which you could see as planning target volume. That means we should give allowance for some movement, uncertainties. It can be because of the patient, internal movement, or it can be because of the setup errors. Like, for example, I have to give allowance for the cast, which has to be very perfect. Sometimes there can be little movement inside the cast also. So the cast has to be perfect. And whenever, you know, the rotation happens with technologists, it will be like wearing the cast, again, we have to put it accurately. So these uncertainties, we have to give some elements for it. So we do give it as planning target volume. So our aim is to cover the planning target volume with good dose. That's what we do in any form of a treatment, whether it is conventional, 3D or MRT or stereotactic. So this is the evolution, like you can see in 2D radiotherapy. Now you see the parotids, both sides, it's almost the whole area. We can see it's just a square. All the normal structures are inside the field. See the cord, you can see the parotids, everything is getting full dose. This is what we do when we were students. And then this is 3D radiotherapy, where we try to conform the dose to the target, but see the parotid cannot be spared very much. And of course the cord is spared, but we are little underdosing these areas. And then we have a spill, which is unnecessary area, there is a drop of dose. Now you see the IMRT plan. We have conformed the dose so well to the target, and we can spare the parotid so well. At the same time, see the cord, there is no dose and there is no spill anywhere else as well. So what is the inference is, the dose received by the target has not changed. So whenever I explain to a patient, we are very clear. See, we are not improving your cure. That is not the truth. The truth with higher technology radiotherapy is we are giving the same cure, but we are improving or we are reducing your morbidity. That is how we talk to our patients. So most of our patients, like whoever come back to us for any kind of high precision, they say, ma'am, you told the truth. The reason is we are very clear. See, what have we done? From evolution from 2D to IMRT, the picture is so clear. From those days to today, the dose to the target doesn't change. It's the same. In fact, we have not missed anything in olden days. Now we are conforming so well that we are really worried about missing only. So it is not, we are not changing that. So the target receiving dose is the same. What we are aiming is just to reduce the morbidity, for which the perception of the public is we are going to charge them. So the normal tissue dose, if we reduce and we could balance the cure and the morbidity, then that's called the best radiotherapy. So the aim of radiotherapy is we deliver at least 90 to 95% of dose to 95% of PTV. In 3D, in IMRT, it is definite 95 to 95 of PTV in IMRT. In stereotactic, it is 95 to 100% of the dose to more than 95% of the PTV. So that is where the difference lies when we plan stereotactic radiotherapy. Now, when we do high precision radiotherapy or stereotactic, I think this picture I have to explain when I do stereotactic. Okay, what is stereotactic? Now we move on to high precision radiotherapy, because the topic of today is actually stereotactic. Stereotactic radiosurgery or radiotherapy or techniques to administer precisely directed high dose irradiation. It is not what we do daily, like we do 200 centigrade in 30 days, or we do 1.8 to 2 in 35 days or 25 days. It is not like that. We do short course. Stereotactic means it is equivalent to a surgery. We do one dose, either it is single dose, that's what we call it as radiosurgery, or nowadays we have a term called fractionated radiosurgery, which we can do to 3 to 5 fractions, or it is a stereotactic, that is very, very conformal radiotherapy, which we can even split to 20 to 25 days. So with a stereotactic setup. So that means your immobilization should be pakka, and then we have to even know what is the volume to be irradiated, and your matching or the verification program should be perfect. Error margin should be least. The error margin allowed in stereotactic is just 1 to 2 millimeters. So your accuracy and precision should be perfect. Initially known or introduced only for intracranial lesions, now the same concept is getting extrapolated to other sites extracranially, that we termed it as stereotactic body radiotherapy. So what is the requirement for stereotactic radiotherapy? It's the first requirement is the target should be small. So we generally do the best stereotactic treatment can be possible only for 2 to 3 centimeters volume. Maximum we go up to 3.5 to 4. So why reducing the volume of normal tissue? See, now we give very high dose. Say we give 15 gray in 1 fraction, or we do even 18 gray in 1 fraction. In that situation, the amount of normal tissue inside the field, that we are more worried. So we have to reduce the normal tissue dose. So when you take larger volumes of disease, then it is not at all possible to reduce the normal tissue dose. So we have to reduce the volume of normal. At the same time, the target tissue has to be irradiated to high doses. Sharply defined target. See, margin has to be very sharp. This is why stereotactic is more useful in volumes which are regular. That means mostly in benign tumors. Now I could come back to this image. Now you see the gross tumor volume, which is marked here as a defined margin. Is this possible in a malignant tumor? Definitely not. The margins will have a microscopic extension of the disease, and so we cannot give a clear-cut defined margin is not seen in malignant tumors. But the same thing if you see a pituitary adenoma, if you see a meningioma, if you see a CP angle tumor, which are all benign tumors, the schwannoma. In that situation, we are able to achieve a clear margin like this, and we could clearly demarcate the margin, and so the advantage is you give relevance only to planning target volume. That means you are skipping what I showed you initially as the clinical target volume. So from the GTV, you just give a very small PTV. That means you are reducing the normal tissue outside the gross tumor volume. So this is possible only with benign tumors. So that is why most of the stereotactic program are for benign etiologies in the intracranial setup. And when you this is for movement patient. I will show this picture again. And then next is accurate radiation delivery. So when we have to give high dose, then no margin of normal tissue needed. So sometimes we make GTV is equal to PTV. That means there is no margin at all if you are confident about your setup level. Initially, the treatment machines were equipped only with a 3D couch. Like the couch can show some degrees of movement. Initially, it was only X, Y, and Z, but now we have 60 couches. Like it can even correct the pitch you unroll. So it is all 6-dimensional correction is possible, and you can go for a perfect setup. So in that situation, if you're confident about your center setup, then we can even avoid even giving that 5 mm or 3 mm PTV. We can just give GTV is equal to PTV and treat. The high conformality, that means the dose has to be conformed all around the volume. It reduces the treatment volume to match the target volume, which I will show you how we match and how we treat or execute the treatment. And most important, we have to exclude any kind of very sensitive structures all around the target. Because those limiting structures, like especially in the cranium, we see optic chiasma, cord, brainstem, so many small structures, hippocampal, should be avoided or to be defined and excluded from the target volume so that you reduce the risk of radiation injury to those structures. So what are all the radiosurgery techniques available? The very old radiosurgery technique is gamma knife radiosurgery. After that, we extrapolated the same concept. We thought, why can't we do in LINAC or in a linear accelerator? And that's where it was. Then the cone system was introduced for LINAC machines. And then we had the LINAC radiosurgery, image-guided radiotherapy in LINAC, and the rotating gamma knife. We have the proton radiosurgery, which is coming up in a big way, and then the tomotherapy machines. All these machines are equipped with the stereotactic program. Gamma knife is the time-tested, very old system. It was devised by Lars Leksell. He was a neurosurgeon, Swedish neurosurgeon. He gave this idea, and it's a wonderful concept. Initial machine was equipped. The gamma knife has 201 cobalt-60 sources. You can see the picture. All the source is targeted to a very small target area, and it is perfect focus. What we call as disadvantages of this program today is the frame. You see, it is an invasive frame, which is fixed to the skull of the patient. So when stereotactic was first introduced, it was an invasive program. Like early morning, the neurosurgeon fixes the frame, and then we do the radiation oncologist do the imaging, planning CT, same contact based slicing, voluming, planning, and everything will be by evening. The treatment will be executed because those days it was only single fraction radiosurgery. And say by 6 or 7 p.m. they remove the frame and the patient needs to rest for 1 or 2 days observation, and the patient was discharged. This is how the program started. But the wonderful advantage of this system is most accurate till date because it is a invasive procedure. The same way, the disadvantage is also the same thing, which is an invasive procedure. And another big problem is Gamma knife is a dedicated system. That means we cannot do any other type of planning in that machine. So that's where we extrapolated the same concept for a linear accelerator. So in that we devised some system called cones. We can fix it to the head and we can treat smaller targets. So because the advantage of converting a linear accelerator to a stereotactic system is because we can use the machine for other purposes, like we can do 3D, we can do MRT. So it's a multi-purpose machine that became as a great advantage of using a linear accelerator for the same. And from invasive frame, we slowly moved on to non-invasive methods. What we do inbuilt, what is image guidance? Now, most of the linear accelerator system will have an inbuilt CT scanner. It is called a cone beam CT, and we do have a portal imaging system. This is also an imaging system. So the CT scanner helps us, the same imaging which we do on day one will be already sent to the machine computer. And what we do on the treatment, first day of treatment, we position the patient with all the immobilization, and then we do a inbuilt CT of the machine, will do an imaging. Now, what we have done shown here is the fusion of those two images, and we see what is the error margin. This is how we verify. So the error margin in case of stereotactic, like for MRT, we have, for site-wise, we have different. Say, for example, in case of head and neck, it has to be 1 to 2 millimeters. Say for, 2 to 3 millimeters in case of pelvis, we give 5 mm. So for every area, there is a guidance. We have international guidelines which we have to follow, and the error margin is already given. And 3 days, we do the imaging, and then weekly in case of MRT. What we do in stereotactic, it is before every treatment we have to give, because every treatment is high dose treatment. So we do either single or we do only 3 to 5 fractions. In that situation, when we deliver high dose to a very small target, so image, first image, verify, shoot. That is how we treat stereotactic program. Now this is the 6T couch, which all the newer linear accelerators are equipped with. Now you can see it can correct both X, Y, Z as well as the pitch or roll. So all 6 degrees of freedom is possible. So the setup is, even with small errors, we can accurately match the target with the treatment volume, so that your error margin will be reduced to almost 0. So this is the treatment setup in case of stereotactic program, how we verify. This is the localizer box, which we fix on the around the head. And then with this, even with the, when we do the CT, you can see the localizer box here. With the box, we do the CT. And then for reproduction on the machine, we use this. And then we try to fix the coordinates. We get the coordinates as the computer gives us the coordinates. And the coordinates has to be reproduced on the machine. And then we do the verification, as I showed you before, the same type. And then we do the verification like this. We fuse the 2 images. And after we achieve or correct the small errors, sometimes we get even without the correction, we get only 1 mm or 2 mm. So even that can be corrected nowadays. We achieve almost 0 to 1 mm and then we shoot. So radiotherapy high precision, what are the uses? So of course, the functional radiosurgery is the most popular area. The EBM, what I mentioned, is evidence-based medicine. That means for which we have larger evidences. Like trigeminal neuralgia, it's the very popular area for functional radiosurgery. Newly coming up areas are even Parkinsonian sites, unilateral tremors. So all this, but we don't have much evidence for those sites. The most common, what we do, stereotactic program is mainly for vascular malformations and benign tumors. In vascular malformations, AV malformation, we have excellent or enormous evidence. Untreated intracranial AVMs have a bleeding risk of approximately 3% per year. So management options, I'm not telling it's only radiosurgery, we have a lot of other choices. Observation, surgical resection, embolization, and radiosurgery. Radiosurgery obliterates the AVM nidus in approximately 75% of patients within 3 years of procedure. So again, even with radiosurgery, we still have the bleeding risk for the next 3 years also. So we explain everything to the patient. Individual obliteration rates vary from 50 to 88% depending on the marginal dose which we administer to the patient. We can even do staged radiosurgery. Say, for example, the nidus is little large. then we cannot do single fraction. In that situation, we do a staged radiosurgery program, like one session in every 4 to 6 months intervals. And then that again, the reason is to reduce normal tissue, because this is not even a tumor, it's a vascular problem. And surrounding normal brain, we have to take into account, we should always respect the normal structures. So this how is the cerebral angiogram, and then we match it, and this is the voluming which is done, and then with is almost 0 to 1 mm, the treatment is delivered. Moving on to benign tumors, the most small benign intracranial tumors, well managed with radiosurgery, fractionated radiosurgery, or stereotactic radiotherapy. That means more than 5 fractions of stereotactic treatment. What are the common tumors we treat? We treat vestibular schwannomas, pituitary adenoma, very common. We do either 5 fractions or we do 25 days. It's a stereotactic radiotherapy program. And then meningiomas, we do fractionated radiosurgery, or and of course non-acoustic schwannomas, which are not more common. We mostly see vestibular schwannomas. This is the image of pituitary adenoma. We do see if it is microadenomas, then the program can be single fraction. We can do even single fraction radiosurgery. The determining factor, how we decide of fractionation, is the distance from the optic chiasma. Because optic chiasma tolerance is very important. We cannot injure the optic chiasma, because we should not give more trouble by treating a benign tumor. Okay, just unacceptable. So whenever we decide any program, so we decide with the scientific reasons. We should measure the distance between the optic chiasma and the tumor. If you really have 5 to 7 mm at least clearance, then we can plan for 1 to 3 fractions. But if you don't get that gap, then it is better to go for fractionated radiosurgeries or fractionated radiotherapy programs. This is our CP angle tumor, vestibular schwannoma. Again, this we have to see how close it is to the brainstem. And we have to be very careful when irradiating these kind of small tumors, especially CP angle, because we should not injure the other closer cranial nerves. And malignant tumors, this is not commonly done. Glioblastomas, generally we see only recurrent tumors. That too, recurrent tumors also because the surrounding area would have been already irradiated. So when we have irradiated brain, then it is going to be a retreatment. Then we just want to reduce the volume. In that situation, if the norms are satisfied, like if you are having a smaller tumor and if you have a little defined volume, then we can try, but not evidence is not more for glioblastoma recurrent tumors. Of course, there are a lot of new programs coming up. We do see stereotactic programs for this kind of, because we cannot say we don't have a choice as well to the patient. But brain metastasis, we have even from single to multiple lesions are treated. Initially, it was started for single brain metastasis, which we take it as, if it is single site, we take it as high palliation. We try to put them in the curative arm. But now it is like, we do even 5 brain metastasis, even 7 or 8. It's going to be a separate stereotactic beams for single isocenter. That means single setup. With that, we can treat multiple targets. It's even in our machine that is possible. And then extrapolation of stereotactic outside the cranium. So like lung, liver, spine, all these are the newer areas where we are going on. Newer in the sense, it's been there for last, say, 2 decades, but still it's all in the learning curve. So what we have done here, see, lung, liver and spine, all these are little different from the cranium because these are all moving targets. Now we have to understand that lung, all these are respiratory movement influenced sites. So whenever we have a moving target in radiotherapy, it is very tough for the radiation oncologist to treat, because first thing what we need is immobilize the target. So in lung and liver, what we do, now we have new options of 4D CT, which can image the patient both in inhalation and expiration, and with that guidance, we generate a separate volume, including, that means even with the respiration, you should not miss the target. There are machines like CyberKnife where it is gated, like in the sense it treats only during inspiration, and expiration the beam is switched off. We can have breathing control programs, equipments, where we can control the breathing. We can ask them to hold the breath in deep inspiration. We treat only during inspiration, and then for expiration the patient is beam off and the patient can relax. So these kind of gating options are available, So because motion has to be controlled very well so that we don't miss the target. That is more important, because if the target is moved, then you have only normal structure there. So we cannot hit the normal tissue with such high dose. So from where, from multiple intracranial lesions, I mean single intracranial, we came to multiple, and then we slowly moved on to lung, of course, liver and pancreas, and then spine. So I think almost all structures are now we can treat with radiotherapy. So the art of balancing, this is what I learned from Dr. Deensha, Tata Memorial Hospital. She always says it is either you deliver good radiotherapy or don't deliver. Because whenever you give radiotherapy, it has to benefit the patient. That means you aim cure and you reduce morbidity. If the patient is becoming sick because of some treatment, then it is better to avoid the treatment. That is what she always taught to all her students. And radiobiological terms, what I would like to give to my people who are listening. So you have to balance the tumor control probability with the normal tissue complication probability. This is what is definition of good radiotherapy. In Deensha Madam words, this is Dr. Deensha. She is no more, and she was the director of Tata Memorial Hospital when I was getting trained for neuro-oncology there. And she always insists that good radiotherapy she defines as the fiddle. A fiddle is a string instrument, so whenever we keep the string too tight, it breaks. Or if it is too loose, it will not produce music. So a good radiotherapy means it has to produce music, or it has to give some change to the patient. That's what she tells all her students, and it is deep driven into my brain, and I try to do the same. I acknowledge all my mentors without whom I cannot be here today and what I am. First to my institute, Madras Medical College, Barnard Institute, and then of course I did my DNP in Ramakrishna Hospital. I really thank the management because as Dean sir said, the minute I finished, I think the next day I joined here. So from then on, it's been 17 years of journey in Ramakrishna Hospital, and it's been amazing what we have done and what I've started from scratch. And really thank our HOD and the surgical team. Been very encouraging, and they've been always our constant support in building the radiotherapy department to this level. And of course, Tata Memorial Center, I will never forget my mentors. This is Dr. Jalali. He's my neuro-oncology mentor, and that is Dr. Brada, who trained me in Royal Marsden, London. So, and Dr. Peter Blake, Dr. Christie of Marsden. So there are a lot of people. I have to give a big list. But I think we have to think about our teachers, because without good teachers, I think that's the lack of today's children. I really feel that sense in myself. So as the part of what I have to do to the society, I'm taking it very seriously. I do all my classes perfectly. I feel whatever I learned has to be given to the next generation. So miles to go before I sleep. Thank you. I would like to take some questions. If anybody is interested or any doubts, please you can go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Karthika, for your excellent exposition of the various treatment modalities under stereotactic treatment techniques in oncology. Any questions from the audience? Actually, we celebrated the World Oncology Day on 4th of this month. So we thought ideally we should have an oncology lecture. And thanks to Dr. Karthika for doing that honor. And it's actually, I also put my teachers' photos, first during any lecture I used to give. Previously, and really it was heartening to see even students, I mean, now the former students respecting their own teachers in whichever way possible during their course of the career. And that is the way, I mean, the children should be developed, and this culture should go on like this. I used to remember all my teachers during my general surgery days and cardiothoracic days, and the various consultants who trained me doing surgeries, who taught me the various complications occurring during surgery, the complications which are even not mentioned in textbooks, we have come across, and which made us full-fledged surgeons later on after the 7 to 10 years after qualifying for the degree. So I thank Kartika for that.
Thank you, sir.
Fair enough. Any questions from participants?
So that means they are very clear, sir.
I hope so.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So I should,
World Cancer Day. Yeah. World Cancer Day was this month. So really thank the management for inviting me for this program this month. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And thanks
thank you. On
everyone.
behalf of management, I should thank all the participants from Sri Ramakrishna Hospital and from outside the hospital, from the city. I thank them once again, and I thank Dr. Kartika Nageshwar Raj. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I thank the marketing team and the PR manager for all the arrangements made. Thank you. We can sign off from the meeting.